So we are in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Theodore. I'm acting as UNDP Altfin Lab Digital Partnerships Lead. I'm also leading UN Blockchain Community of Practice as a new coordinator, and my main role is acceleration lead in multiple acceleration programs that we are running within the innovation team at UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub. So today we have the session called Empowering Innovators, Building the Blockchain for Good Ecosystems, something that I'm really passionate about. We will explore how blockchain can empower change makers to tackle the global challenges in different areas like financial inclusion, climate change, governance, supply chains, etc. In this session, our goal is somehow to uncover the strategies that are fostering collaboration, scaling the solution, building and thriving blockchain for good ecosystems. We have a great setup of the speakers for this topic. My personal passion is fully on the blockchain adoption for many reasons. I truly believe that blockchain technology has the potential to be a game changer for the social impact and sustainability. I think today we will discover a lot of methodologies, tools, and strategies that our panelists and their organizations are using in enhancing and boosting the blockchain adoption within the ecosystems where they are operating. But before we dive into the discussion, I'm delighted to introduce our panelists. I think each of them is bringing unique expertise and leadership in leveraging the blockchain for social good. You will notice that their work spans really through different cross-sector collaborations. We have speakers from the humanitarian innovation, financial inclusion, but also key stakeholders in supporting impact-driven startups in the blockchain industry. So today with me, I have Glenn Tan, who is lead and managing partner at the Blockchain4Good Alliance. This organization is driving cross-sector collaboration to scale the impact for blockchain projects. We have my colleague Arun Maharajan, who is the blockchain lead at UNICEF, one of my favorite persons in the UN ecosystems. He is basically pioneering blockchain solutions for humanitarian aid, and it's supporting startups through UNICEF Venture Fund. We will hear more about this initiative later. We have Isha Varshi here with us, head of ecosystem at Cello Foundation, focusing on financial inclusion and climate action through blockchain innovation. Just recently, we opened a really interesting conversation with the Cello community on digital payments initiatives in different regions. And my colleague Ahmed Amer from Emurgo Labs, CEO of Emurgo Africa, Emurgo Labs, he is supporting blockchain startups with a focus on impact first ventures, really rich experience in building the startup innovation ecosystems. So I will kick off this panel with the same question for all of my panelists. So I'm really interested if you can share one defining moment or project in your work that somehow illustrates the transformative potential of blockchain for social good. Maybe we can go with the order of introduction. So maybe Glenn, you first, then Aaron, Isha, and Ahmed at the end. Glenn.
Yes, sir. Okay, I hope you can hear me fine. Thanks to you for that. A defining moment. Okay, I mean, I didn't know that I was going to be answering this first. Okay, for this question, I'll answer in the lens of the BGA where I'm from, right? So I would say that one really key moment was when we actually supported a project called Ethic Hub in our incubation project. So, and then subsequently having Ethic Hub gaining a lot more support, not just financially, but also in the business strategies, also in the marketing exposures from our parent company, that is Bybit. Because this was a defining moment because, farmers, a social group that is previously excluded, especially for the poorer parts of the world from traditional finance. And now through this particular blockchain project that I've had a personal hand in supporting, they are now able to really attain, financing that really allows them to have their produce all the way from, from farm all the way to table. So it's really about restoring dignity. It's about empowering their productivity. It's reducing exploitation. And all this is backed by a project that is building primarily on blockchain. So especially when when Bybit actually made their impact announcement, and then BGA was the organization that facilitated this, it's more of an indirect fashion, but it went a huge step to really show that the crypto industry, the blockchain industry is really capable of pushing projects that can push blockchain for social good. So for somebody like myself on a personal level who got into the industry as what people like to call a crypto bro about 7 8 years ago, getting in as this degen that just likes to trade cryptos and buy NFTs for over 2 3 bull cycles, this was actually extremely pivotal point, not just for me in my career, but in my personal experience in the industry as well. So that was my defining moment, especially in the BGA.
Excellent, Glenn. Thank you for sharing this. Really inspiring. Aaron, over to you. What was the defining moment or project in your work which basically illustrates this transformative potential of blockchain?
Yes, there are actually many. So I was thinking, what do I say? So if I look at the context of the zeitgeist, right? Like people are saying blockchain is a hammer looking for a nail, it's a solution looking for a problem, all of that. And there's some obvious ones like using stable coins and humanitarian aid and stuff like that. But the not so obvious one, and the things that really stuck with me were like a few. So we implemented one of the startups that the UNICEF Venture Fund funded went through a 5-year journey of resilience, 2 rounds of funding, and multiple discussions and everything until they won an RFP with the UNICEF country office, UNICEF Bangladesh. The startup's name is Statwick. So that is blockchain for tracking of vaccines in the field in Bangladesh. And to me, that's a nice moment when they won the RFP because it's a sign of maturity of blockchain solutions that the government of Bangladesh wanted to work with blockchain. They had a blockchain strategy, and that UNICEF was ready with a solution. So all of that came together. It was a journey. It was a multi-year journey. So that was a really good moment. Then UNICEF Burundi wanted to work with blockchains, and we built out something. So that's in the area of financial inclusion, credit scoring for the youth, so that they can get access to loans. But to me, the why it's a favorite moment is it's UNICEF Burundi. So for those who know Burundi, it's one of the harshest environments to work in. It's one of the poorest nations, and they wanted to work with blockchains. So we built something that can work in low or no internet situations, and to work in that context. And the initial prototypes are actually doing pretty well, and that gives me a lot of hope, because when we think of blockchain, we think of smartphones, high tech, and all that. It need not be the case. I think it can be made to work in all the contexts that the UN typically works in, which is where I would argue there is a lot of need as well. Um, and then going forward, like I have some ideas on radical transparency and fundraising, but I can get into that later. So there are
Thank
some
you, thank
moments.
you, Aaron. Yeah, you already entered the main topic of the discussion. So ecosystem development and ecosystem approach. Thank you for sharing these examples. Isha, over to you. You are representing the Celo community. So what you can like highlight as a defining moment where you basically experience the transformative potential of blockchain for social good and for the
Well,
development.
so thank you for having me today. I'm excited to speak with you all. And then Glenn, Ethic Hub is one of my favorite projects in my ecosystem. So shout out to Ethic Hub. And then Arun also gives such incredible examples, right? And I'm gonna just like pull on some of similar threads, right? So personally, for me, as soon as I joined Cello, I want to say 3 years ago, we did a pilot in Kenya, similar to what Arun was saying. Like, blockchain doesn't have to work with smartphones. We did a pilot with feature phones where we were giving farmers on-chain loans, and these loans were really small. When I say really small, I live in New York. It's an expensive city. It's like 3 coffees for me, right? That's the loan amount we were giving on feature phones. For those that understand, like it's basically getting loans on blockchain using SMS technology, right? And so we gave them these loans, and I'm from Kenya, so we were on the ground. We gave these loans, and I go back like 6 months in to just to visit my family. So I went back to this area where we'd given the loans, and the repayment, by the way, just so you know, best loan like facility we've ever given. I think in the world of finance, we had 100% repayment with barely any interest, but also like market rate interest for Web3. And I go back on the ground and we meet some of these users and slash farmers that like took these loans. And this one person said, Isha, you need to come and see what this loan did, right? And so we went to his farm, his little tiny plot of land, and he had, with the loan, sent one of his grandchildren to school. Otherwise, that grandkid was going to get pulled away from school. So one kid went to school, and the kid came and gave me a hug, which was just like, oh my God. But then the second was he had planted 80 apple trees. In 6 months, obviously these were genetically modified trees. In 6 months, I actually had an apple from this specific apple tree. And he was telling me the revenue. He gave me like an accounting of the revenue from these 80 apple trees that he's planted. And he says, these apple trees will sustain financially 3 generations of my family. Like, we're talking about 3 coffees and 3 generations. Like, to me, that like is unrealistic return on investment, right? Like, that just, you don't hear about it. And so for me, that was like, just, that's a personal moment. And then another one that I think was really exciting, again, like I mentioned, I'm from Kenya. And so I go back to Kenya very often. And 6 months ago, I went home and we have this ecosystem product called Pretium. Essentially, what it does, it links stablecoin payments to M-Pesa payments, right? Every time I'd go back home, I have a Kenya number. I bring my M-Pesa, I recharge my M-Pesa on like the airport. And this whole trip, I was in Nairobi for like, I want to say like 20 days. This whole trip, all my expenses, from the time I landed from the airport to the time I took off, all my expenses, coffee, meals, hotels, bottle of water, every single payment, stablecoin payment, right? And so I'm in Nairobi doing all my payments, stablecoins. I take off. I was like, oh my God, like crypto, everyday usage of crypto, absolutely there, right? And then I go to literally take the flight to Singapore for token 2049. And I was excited because I'm like, in Singapore, I'll use stablecoins because Grab, blah, blah, blah. 3 payments. I got so frustrated. I said, it's fine. Like, let me just use like my cards and my habit card. And so it's really interesting where you're seeing like some of this adoption of Web3, especially stablecoins in some of these economies. It's leapfrogging what we're seeing in the developed world, right? And so like, to me, that's like a lot of hope. You can kind of like then like have these economies leapfrog from a technology perspective, some of the developed world. And so it gives them a really fighting chance in the future. Yeah, so these are just 2 top of mind, and we can definitely chat about more examples, but like these are super personal to me, and we can talk more seller specific examples.
Thank you very much, Isha. You're a great impact storyteller. Really, I really enjoyed listening to you. Ahmed, over to you. I mean, you're working a little bit in different environment. You are somehow ecosystem builder, and you're a venture support organization. So, what is your experience? I know that you supported like hundreds of different startups in different ecosystems around the globe. Maybe some story to share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Tio and Isha. I'm not sure how I can beat that story, but I'll try. So for those of you who don't know, Emergo is essentially the investment arm of Cardano. We're tasked with spreading the blockchain seeds and blockchain adoption seeds, initially strictly on Cardano, but we then launched Emergo Labs, which is a multi-chain venture studio where we focus on RWA, financial inclusion, impact, and bridging traditional industry to Web3. Things we focus on are climate mitigation, fintech, payments and inclusion, trade finance, digital identity, healthcare, agriculture, so on and so forth. So I'll say the one thing we've done that's worked across all of these different layers and verticals is stablecoin. Q4 last year, we successfully launched USDA. USDA is Cardano-backed stablecoin, US dollar pegged and SEC regulated. The reason why it took us so long to launch was because we needed to get it regulated, and the SEC is they don't play around. Let's put it that way. And so that's the proof is in the pudding. We just minted tokens recently, and we're live in 14 US states. However, look at the world we live in. most countries, especially frontier and emerging economies, are struggling. People are struggling to make ends meet. Currencies are losing 100 to 200% annually. The basic necessity of goods is impossible to maintain. National debt rates are shooting through the roof. We've had crisis after another. We've had the Ukraine war. Prior to that, we had COVID. I think we're just a very blessed generation, and we just can't catch a break. And so, all of these issues have had significant effects on the global economy. Even as recent as Trump becoming U.S. president, look at the markets as of late. We're talking every market: equities, debt, commodities, stock markets, crypto markets. Everything is in the red. And so, in such times of crazy uncertainty and volatility, people want to protect what they have. And what they have isn't much, it's a little. And so, this little disappears overnight in the current macroeconomic landscape we live in. And so, with stablecoin, one can at least maintain what they own without it being eroded because of inflation or because of increasing baskets of prices of goods or whatever the reason is. If I'm an avocado farmer in Tanzania or Kenya, and I keep my money in stablecoin, that's a game changer. Just like Isha was saying, how this farmer was growing apples and how that's going to sustain their family for the next 3 generations. That's exactly what stablecoins can do in emerging and frontier markets with crashing currencies and deteriorating economic indicators. And so this is a very interesting time because there isn't an emerging markets regulated stablecoin. Tether, of course, is the biggest of them all, but we've all seen what's been happening in the market as of late. I'm not sure who saw the Mantra token crash the other day. So there's a lot of crazy movements in the industry, and regulation is going to come very fast. We're seeing this in the US right now, adopting digital currencies. And so we have a big challenge ahead of us, and I really hope that we succeed with the launch of USD and really getting to the base, to the top of the pyramid, supporting farmers and co-ops and you name it, across Africa, South, Latin America, South Asia, and helping people create wealth and be able to protect their families and sustain them.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, all of the speakers, for sharing this impact stories. Unfortunately, we need to move a little bit to more discussion oriented toward the ecosystem development. So maybe I would start with Aaron. You have now intensive experience working through the UNICEF through different initiatives that you started or managed. One of the most interesting is definitely venture fund and crypto fund, where you supported for the 20 startups. And in terms of the sustainable ecosystem building, can you share with us some lessons learned, especially if you can take both angles, internal ecosystem development and then working with the startups outside the UN ecosystem and basically building and supporting the startup or innovation ecosystems?
Yes. So I'll start with the external ecosystem first, because that's where the venture fund really works with. So we have more than 22 Web3 startups that we have worked with over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I think. And there are some lessons there. And for the others who are not aware, so the UNICEF Venture Fund works with startups. We give them grants of up to $100,000, and we take them to a 1-year period of mentorship and guidance, and ultimately try to bring them back to UNICEF. So that's what happened in Bangladesh, by the way. So some of the lessons learned is, first, I think as the venture fund, we have to choose the projects very carefully. Many do a lot of talking, but they don't deliver. So we always work with people who have prototypes, and we do not fund ideas. And I think it's very important. So we have a strong technology team on our side who helps us go through this, so that we don't make. I mean, we don't get everything right, but we try to not completely mess it up. The second one is regulatory compliance. So this was a lesson hard learned. So there was a startup with a brilliant idea and also a great prototype, and this was a remittance use case, and they are from the Congo, and we are like, yeah, that's actually great. Let's work with them. And then as it turns out, in Congo, the crypto legality was a certain way, and then they couldn't do it. So they ended up pivoting to an NFT-based thing. The startup themselves did pretty well. I have to say, after the pivot and everything. But then our lesson learned is, check all that properly first, especially when crypto is involved. So that was a lesson learned a couple of years ago. So now we do that. It'd be super cool to have an API that I can click and then I'll get the latest regulatory report on the country, but we don't have that. Then another lesson is blockchain flavors will change depending on what we're doing. So permission, hybrid, public, so on, and of course cryptocurrency itself can get in the way of implementation, especially in the UN where there's still reasonable resistance, I would say, to anything, to even the word crypto. So that is something that we have to sort of manage carefully, and of course still we can't expect things to happen ASAP. We need to take the long view, and from our experience that has actually worked. And there is a lot of fear also internally. So one lesson learned is like how to communicate things, especially if it involves crypto and public blockchains, to the internal ecosystem. There is data, of course, that we can communicate, but then also to mention examples, and then to highlight impact. I think that's something that really works well, and that's to segue into the internal ecosystem. That's one of the things that I do a lot. So I keep trying to talk to people about what is possible, and then why, and then how we can manage the risk, which I think is a very solid everyday thing within the UN, right? Risk and how to mitigate risk and how to mitigate risk, how to manage risk. So I try to take a technology approach towards managing this risk, but we also end up dealing a lot with legal, regulatory stuff and all that. So we try to bring everything together. And one more interesting learning is when we are working with blockchains, especially startups and then the ecosystem, we should, I think, keep in mind the people who we have worked in the past, and then see if the people who we will work with in the future can integrate with any of them, so that one can come up with a modular combined positive sum solution. So that's something that we keep our eyes on, to see if, like, oh yeah, that protocol can work with this startup that we worked with 2 years ago to enable some use case in East Africa. So that sort of overview thing is always running in the head, like who can work with who, and then we actually connect them together to build stuff. But I can get into that later. So that's my
Thank you for pointing this out. We already have some questions that are also covering this angle, but before we will go to Q&A from the audience, I would like to have a round of questions for all of you guys. Maybe Ahmed, continuing on this lessons learned from the work that you are doing. I mean, Aaron and UNICEF have a little bit different angle, because UNICEF is here to bring the systematic change in the challenges and problems and pains that different population segments have. But you are working directly with the startups, right? And I suppose that you are working with impact first, impact only, profit driven, profit only startups within your acceleration programs, innovation acceleration programs. So my question is, how or what kind of the approach Emergo Labs have in helping startups and new builders having more impactful solutions and impactful ventures than just being traditionally oriented to the profit making?
Sure. That's been a challenge for a while, because it's always been impact or profit. As of late, if you're creating impact, you're not sustainable. You're living off grants. You're at the mercy of these long cycles of grants. So you move from one grant to another, from one pitch competition to another. And it could take you up to 5 years, like, Arun said, to land something. And if you're, revenue generating or profit generating, you don't create impact because you want to be profit generating, right? However, there are interesting instances where we've seen the marrying of both these sort of points, more importantly, in specific areas related to RWA. Like I mentioned earlier, our focus is on RWA, and it's not just on helping the startups and the builders, Tio, but it's really on helping them get to monetization, even if they're in the impact space. Okay, so since I'm mentioning that, I'm just going to announce that both Emergo Labs and UNDP, we've come together and we've launched an SDG accelerator on Cardano. So if you're listening and you are a builder interested in getting support from Emergo Labs on the tech side and UNDP on the partnership side in the UN umbrella, please apply. If someone can post the link in a chat box or a question box here, that'd be great. So little segue there. But this makes it becomes a lot easier when we're focusing on specific industries that have been archaically inefficient. Climate finance, dinosaur, right? It's always been ineffective. Banks have not put a penny in. Carbon credit regulations are a mess. How do we take this forward, right? Blockchain as technology enables massive transparency that fights greenwashing, fraud, things like that. So we've built a couple of solutions in that area, and blockchain has proved to be a really, really effective technology for climate finance. Digital identity, for instance, is another one where oftentimes we were involved with a project to essentially prove that academic credentials are in fact true. And that was impossible prior to using on-chain and sort of trusted means. So that's another use case. A third use case is access to healthcare. Access to healthcare in many countries is unavailable to folks without state ID. However, we created some pilots that include digital identities that are utilizing crypto and blockchain, not just for payments, but also for KYC and proof of person. And there's so much more of those. If you just go on our website, emergo.africa, not Emergo Labs website, the Emergo Africa website, and we have a tab on a deep dive we did with PwC 2 years ago on the state of Web3 in Africa and the Middle East, and all these really interesting opportunities where at the intersection of impact and blockchain that actually not just create impact, but are monetizable and everybody wins.
Thank you, Ahmed. To all of the speakers on the panel, just check also the Q&A chat. You can see maybe some questions that are directed to you, so maybe you can answer them in the chat without opening the floor here for the participants. Definitely I will open for some of the questions. But when we mention now SDG Blockchain Accelerator, that is strategically also co-lead with Blockchain4Good Alliance among the Emergo Labs and the UNDP, Glenn, really one of the questions connected to this, like Blockchain4Good Alliance is the organization which is like mostly positioned as an ecosystem builder, right? So I'm really interested to hear how BGA is fostering the collaboration across the sectors to build this like a thriving ecosystem for the Blockchain4Good. success stories that we heard in the first part of the panel that will be shared by the panelists. So what is your agenda? What is your strategy? How are you dealing with this ecosystem development approaches and strategies?
Right. Thanks for the question, Theo. So to me, I believe that a thriving blockchain for good ecosystem needs a few core pillars. Okay, so first one, I would say off the top of my head, intentional design. I think solutions, of course, must be designed with a purpose, not just for novelty that we see very often in the industry. So for a blockchain for good ecosystem, public good can't be the byproduct. It has to be the driver behind the motivation behind projects. Which brings to the second point as well. So just having that driver is not important, because I think that cross-sector collaboration is also extremely key. And I think this is also a point that has been touched by some of the other panelists here, that the best outcomes really happen when a lot of stakeholders in the entire ecosystem, from governments, various enterprises, from civil society, from not just Web3 developers, but even the Web2 side of things, when everybody comes together and speaks a common language, that's where really the magic happens, right? Because working in silos doesn't really make sense for projects to reach scale, which they really, really need in order to change the world, which BGA's mission lies in, even though it's a bit idealistic, it's a bit bold, but hey, we believe it can be done. And the last thing that I think is extremely important for a thriving ecosystem is also long-term support through sustainable funding models. So of course, this is where Ahmed was touching a little bit as well about the funding side of things and how we're running the SDG blockchain accelerator in order to provide such things. I am personally pretty loud about my own opinion in the space and how I want to position BGA in the entire blockchain for good realm, because people don't often link sustainability to profitability. I mean, I'm a founder in the Web3 space myself for a tokenization startup, so maybe after this we should have a private talk. Just joking. But the thing is, when it comes down to it, people don't often link sustainability and profitability as, something that goes hand in hand. So we really don't see many financiers right now backing ESG type projects as compared to the typical DeFi projects in the space. Sure, it's definitely rising, but it's definitely not at that level where all of us are comfortable with it yet. So projects without, like the right kind of support, the right kind of incubation, mentorship, and even funding support, even the best ideas can really fall apart. Even at the very start, at the MVP stage, they can all fall. So at the Blockchain for Good Alliance, we address all these various things through the initiatives that we have. For example, everybody knows we sponsor global hackathons around the world, big and small, from university levels all the way to real world levels. We have injected BGA tracks onto hackathons all across the world, all focused on the SDGs of the UN, and we draw in hundreds and thousands of participants each time. So our incubation program internally as well provides equity-free grants. We provide promising projects with mentoring, access to our network, and real-world pilot support, amongst a lot of other diverse resources as well. And of course, once again, through the joint fund that we have with partners like yourself, partners like Emergo Labs, this is where we really align resources across the various partners for folks. And more importantly, at the BGA's own lens and our own level, I believe that the Blockchain for Good Alliance acts as the interpreter. We translate blockchain into something that perhaps policymakers, citizens, farmers, through projects that we support like Ethic Hub, corporations. So everybody in the entire world, regardless of where they're from, can actually understand what blockchain is used for. So this is where we really like to position BGA at the center of everything. We interpret the use of blockchain for people in order to make the world a better place. So we do believe that we don't work in silos when we build together. So that's where I think a thriving blockchain ecosystem can really, really shine.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, excellent message. It's still not the end of the panel, but I'm looking forward to see also the effects of these messages that we are sending out to the audience. Isha, continuing to this, we have been discussing mostly acceleration programs and what are the lessons learned and what kind of the strategies we are having in place while building the acceleration ecosystem and startup ecosystems. You are working for Celo Foundation, and you already have some significant use cases, for example, in financial inclusion, particularly in the emerging markets like Africa, right? So what kind of the strategies you have seen that are most effective in scaling these solutions? So imagine that here in the SDG Blockchain Accelerator, maybe we will have a couple of use cases, in the regions like Africa, and what are the lessons learned? What is the most effective approach in scaling this already accelerated solutions, and what kind of the message maybe you can send also to the builders here in the audience, how they can replicate this success?
Thank you for that question. And also, I really agree with what like Glenn and some of the other panelists said around like having this like robust ecosystem to come to this point where you can kind of go from 0 to 1, and then you and I can now talk about like 1 to 100, right? And so what we've seen, we have ecosystem projects that have actually done really well in scaling in the last couple of years, even though it's bear market. To give you an example, we have a product in Africa called Opera Mini Pay. It's a stablecoin wallet, and that's kind of gone from like 0 to like 7 million users in a year plus. Stablecoin only wallet, so it has USDC, USDT, and CUSD in the wallet. Really like robust product, as other than just being like holding of stablecoins for value, just saving. We also have like other dApps that are integrated, right? And so I think something that I think we can attribute to the scale of that, and this product is growing like at an exponential scale. And so if we meet in like a week, hopefully I should be giving you like a 10 million number kind of thing, right? So we're seeing growth of this product like really exponentially. I think the thing that we've noticed that is helpful in scale is actually like a good product market fit. And that could differ time to time, period to period, country to country. And so having great product market fit and getting excellent like feedback from your user base. Sometimes in Web3, we have a tendency to say a square peg round hole kind of problem, right? Like we have a square peg, but we want to shove a round hole in there. And so like just listening to having like excellent market research and listening to your customers is something that I think like across the board, any product you're building and scaling, you kind of need to do. And for this, we have like really we have strategies in the ecosystem, right? I sit at an ecosystem level for a layer 1, layer 2 blockchain. And so we have stuff in the ecosystem that helps with some of this. So for instance, we have regional DAOs in every region that are on the ground, that talk to the consumer, that themselves are from the region, right? So to give you a really good example, the MiniPay product works very closely with our regional DAO in Africa called Africa DAO. And Africa DAO, as they're not just like product feedback, they also like, for instance, host hackathons. Some of the products that have integrated into MiniPay have come from builders that like were from the Africa DAO, right? And so it's basically having like a regional context, but also having like folks in different region. I really like, I'm a big believer, like I don't know anything. You have to go on the ground and figure out what the actual problem is. And so, like I said, like we have an Africa DAO, we have a Latin America DAO, we have like a Southeast Asia DAO, like Vietnam and Philippines are separate. So each region is kind of like taken separately. And then again, right, having the access to right kind of capital, whether it's at the venture stage. So we have a bunch of like ecosystem funds that do venture investing in some of these projects that are scaling. I want to also like I have this really big problem that most projects that are working in the impact space plus in the emerging market space find it very difficult to raise capital, right? And so we're talking about impact versus profit, but even if you have products that are profit focused, it's really difficult for some of these projects to raise capital in Silicon Valley, for instance, right? So if you are an investor in the space and are looking to deploy capital, I would really recommend you go to EM. EM has some incredible teams and set of practical projects being built. What my other request is, please go study the markets, because valuations in those regions are very different from how you'd value a project in the US or the European markets. And so I think just like having the right infrastructure in place. And do I think we're there yet? No, I think like folks like Embargo and Blockchain4Good and all of these folks are like helping build, and yourself obviously are helping build out this ecosystem. Can we do with a lot more help? Absolutely. Yeah, that's like my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, maybe connected to this, I don't know if anyone, we need to finish the panel soon, but maybe just like a quick question for you guys. I don't know if anyone can answer this. How we can overcome these different kind of the challenges and barriers that we have, especially in the cross-border or global collaboration, from the point of the view of the ecosystem builder or startup supporters like you are. so what is the next step? Maybe someone would like to jump in with the answer on this question, just shortly.
What's the question, Tio? It's how can we enable cross-border?
How we can overcome this siloed approach that you guys are working in this region with these startups. How we can raise the level of collaboration, being the cross-border regional one, global ones, not only through enabling the market scalability of the startups that you are supporting, but also other ecosystem players, being incubation acceleration programs, regulatory bodies, etc., etc. Just briefly, if someone can jump in.
I can quickly answer that. That's a challenge we will continue to see, but I think we, as Emergo, we've overcame this a little bit in two ways. One way is one of the biggest hindrances to cross-border collaboration is the inability to transact. Stablecoins are significantly helpful for that. That's the first point. The second point is, in order to create cross-border collaborations, there need to be commonalities. There needs to be shared issues, shared challenges, shared culture. The global south works very well together. I mean, we've expanded companies from Africa to Latin America and vice versa. It's a bit more of a challenge if you want to expand companies from Africa into the Middle East, for instance. But there's been a recent charge towards that in the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years. So I think that's the short answer for the interest of time.
Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, we need to wrap up, but I have a closing question, of course, for you. One word, one short sentence. So if you imagine that in 4 or 5 years, the blockchain technology was really adopted, what would be the headline that you want to see about the blockchain's role in transforming the social impact, or basically positioning systematic change as an end result of the blockchain? So can you share like a one bold prediction or maybe hope for the future? One word, one sentence. Aaron, we will start with you.
I have a sentence because it's a headline, which I wrote down. The Clipper mission discovers life on Europa. And on other news, here's a full report with the blockchain hash proof of the UN Secretary General approving the latest UN DAO proposal to utilize $5 million for developing and open sourcing the next upgrade of explainable AI for mediating international peace negotiations.
Excellent. Thank you.
I actually thought about
it. Over to you.
I would say blockchain for good, but that would be a cop-out. I think something that captures impact and income generation. So I don't know. Stake your digital identity and earn UBI based on it.
Okay, thank you, Glenn.
Ahmad, we're doing that tomorrow, by the way. So keep your eyes peeled. In 3 months, I'll send you that.
Send me a link, please.
I'm just going to use Ahmed's and say Blockchain4Good because that's literally the name of my organization. My God. Okay, what I would say perhaps is just quick headline, right? Imagine it's something written by somebody, some expert, some KOL, some big guy, and it's just blockchain becomes invisible. That's a hope for me. Like there is no longer the use case where people judge a project just because it has or does not have blockchain, but people really care more about the real world impact that it has, and blockchain just becomes a technology like everything else.
Thank you, Glenn. Anisha, for the end, your message, bold message.
I think similar to what Glenn said, blockchain becomes invisible, stable coins become like they replace all currencies, and we all transact in one specific, whichever currency, one chain, one token for all transactions. We're not talking about cross-border remittance anymore. We're just talking about money movement. And hopefully that'll help with financial inclusion in the future.
Excellent. Guys, thank you very much for participating in this panel. Thank you very much also for answering the questions that we had in the Q&A section. Yeah, unfortunately, this is the topic that we could talk the whole day, but we need to wrap up and we need to close. See you now in the next sessions. Arun, Ahmed, Glenn, Isha, thank you very much for joining this panel. It's really lovely to talk with you. See you.
See you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Just want to say that we have the builder spotlight now. So the next session. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.